At 4:45 in the morning on September 1st, 1939, the battleship Schleswig-Holstein opened fire on the Polish garrison at Westerplatte. The shells screamed across the dark water of the Danzig harbor, and the 20th century cracked open. Within hours, 1.5 million German soldiers poured across the Polish frontier. Above them, the Luftwaffe blackened the sky, over 2,000 aircraft moving in coordinated waves. On the ground, 19 panzer divisions churned eastward through morning mist and ripening wheat fields. The Wehrmacht called it Fall Weiss, Case White. The world would come to know it as Blitzkrieg, Lightning War. Poland had 39 infantry divisions, 11 cavalry brigades, and courage that bordered on the suicidal. They had lances, sabers, and a military doctrine designed for the last war. Germany brought a new kind of warfare: speed, coordination, and overwhelming violence concentrated at single points until the enemy lines simply ceased to exist. The invasion lasted 35 days. It changed everything. Private Tomasz Kowalski heard the aircraft before dawn broke over his garrison near Wielun. He had been awake for an hour, smoking his last cigarette, watching the stars fade into gray. The sound came from the west, a low building drone that vibrated in his chest before it reached his ears. Wielun was an open town, no military installations, no strategic value, just 16,000 civilians sleeping in their beds at 4:40 in the morning. The Luftwaffe hit it anyway. Heinkel HE-111 bombers dropped their payloads on the hospital first. The Red Cross painted on the roof meant nothing. 75% of the town center ceased to exist in the first 20 minutes of the war. Tomasz watched the horizon turn orange. He smelled burning timber carried on the September wind. His hands shook as he gripped his Mauser rifle, a weapon his father had carried in 1920 against the Bolsheviks. That war had been different. Cavalry charges had meant something then. Across the border, Luftwaffe pilots followed precise coordinates. Their mission briefings emphasized speed and shock. Destroy Polish airfields before their planes could scramble. Cut communication lines. Bomb railway junctions. Create chaos. The doctrine came from General Wolfram von Richthofen, cousin of the Red Baron, a man who had tested these tactics on Spanish civilians at Guernica 2 years earlier. Polish Air Force pilots sprinted toward their PZLP-11 fighters, open cockpit monoplanes with fixed landing gear. Good aircraft for 1931, obsolete by 1939. German Messerschmitt Bf-109s dove on them before most could reach altitude. Within 3 days, the Polish Air Force existed only in scattered remnants, hiding in forest clearings, taking off for desperate sorties that accomplished little beyond dying with honor. In Warsaw, air raid sirens wailed for the first time at 6 a.m. Civilians stumbled into the streets in night clothes, staring upward. Most had never seen a military aircraft outside newsreels. Now they watched formations of 50 bombers pass overhead in perfect V patterns, their shadows sliding across apartment blocks and church steeples. Janina Mroczek, a 19-year-old nursing student, ran toward the hospital where she volunteered. Glass crunched under her shoes. A woman sat on the curb holding a photograph and crying. Somewhere nearby, a child screamed for its mother. The war was 4 hours old. Feldwebel Heinrich Müller commanded the lead Panzer II in his company's advance through the Polish corridor. The tank reeked of diesel fumes, hot metal, and the sweat of 3 men crammed into a steel box designed for 2. His driver, a 19-year-old from Bavaria, had vomited twice since crossing the border. Fear or motion sickness? Heinrich did not ask which. The Panzer II was not a formidable machine. Thin armor, a 20mm cannon suitable for armored cars and infantry, less so for serious combat. But the Poles had almost nothing to counter even this modest threat. Their anti-tank rifles could penetrate the armor at close range, but close range meant the Panzer's machine guns had already found you. Heinrich's column rolled through a village whose name he never learned. Thatched roofs burned. Livestock wandered in the road, cows and pigs released by farmers who had fled east. An old man stood in a doorway, watching the German tanks pass with an expression Heinrich would remember for the rest of his life. Not fear, not anger. Something closer to exhaustion, as if he had seen this before and knew exactly what came next. The Blitzkrieg doctrine demanded speed above all else. Do not stop to secure territory. Do not wait for infantry to consolidate positions. Push forward. Find gaps in the enemy line and exploit them. let the follow-on forces handle prisoners, refugees, and resistance. The spearhead units had one job: advance. Polish defenders fought with extraordinary bravery and inadequate equipment. At Mokra, the Volhynian Cavalry Brigade charged German positions, not with lances, as Nazi propaganda would later claim, but with sabers drawn after their horses carried them through gaps in enemy lines. They overran artillery positions. They captured German prisoners. For a few hours they held. Then the Stukas came. The Junkers Ju-87 dive bomber carried sirens on its landing gear, Jericho trumpets that screamed during attack dives. The sound alone broke formations. Polish horses panicked, throwing riders. Infantry scattered into ditches and tree lines. The 50-kilogram bombs were almost secondary to the psychological effect. Heinrich watched a Stuka attack from inside his tank. The aircraft seemed to fall straight down from the sky, pulling up at the last moment while bombs tumbled toward the Polish artillery battery. The explosions walked across the gun positions in neat succession. When the smoke cleared, twisted metal and silence remained. His driver vomited again. By September 17th, the situation had become hopeless. Soviet forces crossed Poland's eastern border that morning, Stalin collecting his share of the secret agreement signed with Hitler 3 weeks earlier. Poland now faced invasion from two directions by the world's two largest armies. Captain Władysław Reginas commanded a small fortification at Wisna, where 720 Polish soldiers faced 42,000 Germans supported by tanks and heavy artillery. The position controlled a narrow crossing point over the Narew River. Reginas ordered his men to hold for 3 days. They held for 3. When German forces finally overran the bunkers on September 10th, Reginas detonated a grenade rather than surrender. Across Poland, similar stories multiplied. The garrison at Westerplatte, where the first shots had been fired, resisted for 7 days against overwhelming naval and ground assault. They surrendered only when ammunition ran out and the walls of their fortifications had been reduced to rubble. German officers, impressed by the defense, allowed the Polish commander to keep his ceremonial saber. Warsaw refused to fall. The capital endured aerial bombardment that killed 25,000 civilians and destroyed 40% of the city's buildings. German artillery fired over 30,000 shells into residential neighborhoods. The water supply failed. Hospitals operated without electricity. Still, the city held until September 28th, when starvation and lack of ammunition made further resistance impossible. Helena Jabłonska, a 43-year-old schoolteacher, spent those final days distributing bread to soldiers at barricades built from overturned trams and cobblestones. She carried water in buckets from the Vistula River after the mains broke. She helped surgeons amputate limbs by candlelight. When the surrender came, she stood in the street and wept. Not from fear, but from something fiercer. The campaign had lasted 35 days. Germany suffered 16,000 dead. Poland lost 66,000 soldiers killed, with another 694,000 taken prisoner. Civilian casualties remained uncounted. They would continue mounting for 6 more years. On October 5th, Hitler reviewed a victory parade through Warsaw's ruined streets. Panzer divisions rolled past skeletal buildings. Luftwaffe aircraft flew overhead in formation. The Führer smiled for cameras. The world had witnessed something new. War conducted at machine speed, with industrial efficiency, stripped of the last pretenses of chivalry. Poland was the proving ground. France, the Low Countries, Yugoslavia, Greece, and the Soviet Union waited their turn. The lightning had only begun to strike.